Okay. All right. Well, we come to one of my favorite parts of any particularly wonderful evening. This particularly evening has been wonderfully wonderful, and it's going to increase in wonderment as we hear our feature speak. Mr. Martin Joseph, a wonderful friend of mine, of long-term note and merit, and we recently had a very good conversation out in the park. It was one of my favorite memories. A beautiful day, and we had a wonderful time. But just to catch folks up, Martin has performed at sacred grounds, I think, 10 or 12 years now, even maybe longer ago than that, and is featured on several occasions at the cafe and even also here on Zoom. He's been very supportive of the venue in general over the years, and a very interesting moment together with Alan Harris and myself. He was an executive producer of the Sacred Grounds studio film Cosmic Orphan on the El Teramo. And if you haven't seen that film, this is something you should ask Martin about. Perhaps he will advise us as to how that might be done. That happened in 2019, by the way, before the big change. He's a bright, comedic, and politically savvy writer who crafts his poetry with care and consideration.
Okay, well, good evening, and thank you for having me. I had no idea that the theme was going to be resurrection, but my first poem tonight is called God the Hitchhiker. So, yeah, we picked up a guy named God yesterday hitchhiking. I mean, who hitchhikes anymore? But still, it was a long trip and we thought we might get bored, so we picked him up. Nice guy, really excited about things, kept going on and on about this thing, about that thing. Keen observations, everyone. Recognition of different world perspectives, different time frames, different levels of consciousness about the world around, different this, different that. I mean, he just kept going on and on. Water creation in outer space, the colors beyond infrared and ultraviolet, national health care, domination of the greedy over the nice, crocodilian brain, vestigial tail, Donald Trump, the accident of rainbows, on and on. So fascinated and in love with everything. Inchworms of time arching their backs into semicircles to get to the next dot on a single axis of measurement. Eventually, we hit our limit. We left him back on the side of the road. He was examining the colors of the desert flora. He was amazed at the insides of the atom and the taste of strawberries and roasted almonds. He was good with that. He waved to us as we sped away. Speaking of the universe, the next one is called N-Dimensional Universe. There's a lot of crazy driven by the seeking of advantage. There is a dimension for every way of looking at it. One can be a genius at chess and still struggle with the tying of shoelaces or being trusted to walk city streets. Bell curves are everywhere, and they can be seen as the struggle to make things better or a map to exploit the softer underbellies of the group. You do not have to look to the vastness of the stars to find end dimensions. One can be a good family man, yet make a profession of murder. One can be a speaker of truth here, and yet a deceiver over there. One can know oceans, and yet be ignorant of other oceans. They're not all bell curves, though they seem to be everywhere. Some are absolutes of being this thing or not. It just depends on how the lines are drawn and who is drawing the lines and for what purpose. Okay, next one. In late June of this year, scientists on the Nanograv project announced that they had data supporting Einstein's idea that the gravitational waves make space-time itself a little wobbly. This is the first major idea about the universe since the discovery 50 years ago of a universal residual 3-degree Kelvin background radiation left over from the Big Bang. It inspired me to write this poem. It's called When My Galaxy Meets Your Galaxy. When my galaxy meets your galaxy, there might or might not be explosions right away. I am, after all, mostly space with some very intense dots of matter in between. Very intense, so intense that there is influence and interaction very far away from the center. And so are you. Or so your influence, intensity, and interaction make me feel. To be honest, the interactions are more interesting than the explosions. I mean, what are we anyway? American television? Europeans have more patience, but eventually they also want explosions. I get more feeling from the near miss, the near field interactions that show me so many of your levels that I would not know if I just crashed into you head on. I like my galaxy. I wouldn't be anything without it, but there's a giant black hole in the middle of it. And there's one in yours too. And if the two of us ever meet or even come close, that closeness will create gravitational waves that can be measured across the universe, showing that the universe itself is wobbling just a little in every direction at once. If anyone is measuring, that is. Einstein would have been thrilled if he weren't dead. And that's the thing about this. Einstein had to be thrilled when he was still alive, just at the fact that he thought of it. He knew that someday someone might measure it, someday, and today they did. And when my galaxy meets your galaxy, and it's looking like the Milky Way and Andromeda will make that happen, I will have been long gone since, and so will you. I will never know if you have 2 arms and 2 legs or any arms or legs at all. I will never know if you invented any gods or devils or whether your planet runs on an advertising-based economy. I will never know who is driving the bus over there. I can only experience the now. The process of imagining that you are out there, this mortal coil of my time lasts 80 years or so. I have no idea if your time considers that time to be a grain of sand or an unscalable mountain. I have no idea whether you would look upon me as a curiosity or as a snack, if you had eyes at all. That is. The best I can do is imagine it all and enjoy the imagining while I can. I am told that water is created naturally in space, lots of it. And from that, life everywhere, just not close enough for us to see right now. I have it on good authority because my granddaughter once wrote in a poem that there is a lot of space in space. Okay, changing moods a little bit. The next one is kind of a Broadway ditty. It's called "It's Better to Be the Schlemiel Than the Schlemazel." Oh, it's better to be the Schlemiel than the Schlemazel. It's better to make mistakes than to take the hit. As we strut about the stage, you can find it on any page. There will be unintended consequences in the bit. They say that in most accidents, there's not one mistake, but 2. It means that not only did somebody else go wrong, but there is also you. Oh, it's better to be the schlemiel than the schlemazel, to be walking a wooden plank in center stage. When you hear that your name is called, you turn round with the plank and all, and the unsuspecting schlemazel takes the hit. Now, to you, this may seem artificial, but in the real world, some people, their luck they flout. when they all go around with one flub hanging out. So my advice is to watch out for all the others and to be sure that you run your own tight ship. Treat them as if they all were your brothers, and you know how your brothers can make a slip. Still, it's better to be the schlemiel than the schlemazel. Awareness is the first intelligence. If you walk into that pane of glass, it will bounce you back on your ass. You'll be wondering what happened to your competence. Okay, moving right along. We get to Potemkin's villages. Potemkin was Catherine the Great's foreign minister. The NFL, NBA, MLB, and NASCAR, the United States Congress and Supreme Court, the daily and nightly news, every building with a cross on it, or a crescent, or a six-pointed star, or a frog. Any commercially branded symbol, from Ronald McDonald to the Death Star, from Pollo Loco to the Hallmark card, from the Geico Gecko to the Texaco Star, from Santa Claus to Coca-Cola, from Friday Night Lights to Arby's, from the Lord's Prayer to the proclamation that greed is good, from red state to blue state, from faith in the dollar to faith in the water and the air, from faith in education to faith in faith, from faith in your doctor to faith in your neighbors to faith in your fellow drivers on the road. Even that one who is thinking that if he makes it through this, he will never do this again. Potemkin's villages, all manufactured on the fly before you got here and disassembled after you were gone. Okay, we get to the next one. Next one is called Myths of Our Times. You know that Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny are your mom and dad, right? Okay. Then let's get started. You know that Jesus Christ was a real person who said real things, but the Catholic Church, the evangelicals, and a long list of scheduled theologies are not, right? Okay, then let's get started. You know that trickle-down economics is a load of crap designed to justify leveraged greed at the highest level, right? Okay, then let's get started. You know that those 10,000 ballots that they found floating in the bay near Benicia were San Francisco municipal ballots, right? Okay, then let's get started. You know that global warming is really global climate change that runs both boiling hot and ice age freezing, right? Okay, then let's get started. You know that the weakness of democracy lies in the susceptibility of delusion in the minds of its peoples, right? Okay, then let's get started. You know that Joe Stalin was not a communist, right? He used the Red Star to his own purposes, which had nothing to do with communism and everything to do with autocracy, right? Okay, then let's get started. You do know that corporations are not people, right? In many cases, the people behind the corporations are not even people either. They are other shells within shells within shells, or some team of lawyers' fantasies about what they can get away with. You know this, right? Okay, then let's get started. You do know that of the people, by the people, and for the people is more of an objective than a fact, right? Okay, then let's get started. You also know that the Supreme Court justices act more as Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny for the politicians who put them in office, right? Okay, then let's get started. You do know, I hope, that the idea of democracy will go on forever is a hope, not a certainty, and that human history is written in the blood of fallen ideals, right? Okay, then let's get started. And you know that when you get an email or phone call that says, click here to claim your prize or come to Nebraska to claim it, that you have won absolutely nothing, right? Okay, then let's get started. And finally, You know that all the myths, all of the mind-altering inventions of artificial intelligence and all the schemes designed to let one part of mankind exploit another part of mankind cannot be enumerated in the time allowed here, right? Well, I could try, but don't get me started. Okay. Take a quick sip. Next one is called Dismantling the Sistine Chapel. When the Sistine Chapel is dismantled, the section of the ceiling could and should be preserved. The fresco was a great work of art by Michelangelo. And as for the chapel itself, we've outgrown the need for it. The men in robes with their stories to sell and their land to own and their people to control are no longer needed. We've figured it out for ourselves and come to a different conclusion about who owns us and who owns our minds and who owns our hearts and our daily lives. The simple answer is we do. So we're not tearing down the walls in anger, although there are many who would have reason to do so. We're simply moving on the surface of a limited earth with a limited room to form new forms of growth that will need the space. We respect the great labors of the great artisans and armies of workers who lugged the giant rocks of the great pyramids, who measured the angles with knotted ropes, who built the Colossus of Rhodes in the Roman Colosseum, and who were those rare geniuses who made the statues and built the great edifices. We honor those who built all the great castles and palaces, but not necessarily those who lived in them. In fact, most often, necessarily not. It just turned out that we didn't need hierarchies of aristocrats and priests, nor did we need oligarchs and owners. We still have museums, and great ones at that, where one can see intact Michelangelo's ceiling. In the adjoining halls, one can see the elegant priestly robes next to the simple monk's garments and hair shirts. And over here are the suits of armor and kingly vestments and jewels of the court. In the next hall over, one can pore over the various plans and schemes for world domination that have been hatched at different times and places, with a special wing for those who tried it with capitalistic enterprises. These are all good reminders of where we have been before we collectively freed ourselves with our own thoughts. We don't need ceremonies, but just in case, I will light this torch and hold it up to the darkness. Next one. Every generation starts from zero. I understand that every generation starts from zero and that the time from cutting the umbilical cord to cutting the apron strings varies by the individual, and for some, never happens at all. I get that the world of lies extends beyond Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, beyond the used car dealership, beyond the deep-fried breaded everything that your TV tells you is better than the other guy's deep-fried breaded everything, without naming the other guy. Beyond the church door, beyond the ballot box, beyond the uniforms and guns, beyond the tax returns, beyond anything that asks for your implicit trust. I get that we have some time to figure it out for ourselves. Very quick one here called A River Within an Ocean. It doesn't have to hide because almost no one is looking, or rather they're looking at other things that they consider to be important. Still, it is there, the river within the ocean, nearly imperceptible, nearly the same as everything around it, the same substance, the same color, or nearly so, differentiated only by its movement, the slow physics of continental currents played out in the middle of an ocean, channeled at places by subsurface mountain ranges into a rushing current. Who is that person standing on the bow of the ship who has the patience, who has the perception to see it? Who will feel its push and follow its current to get home more safely and more quickly? So this one is called Republican Village People. The Conservative Political Action Coalition, or CPAC, is a bellwether organization for the far right. Once a year, they have a convention, and I imagine that the booking agent for that convention might make a slight error. He might have looked at the name of the group Village People and thought, well, that sounds like a good rural American band, probably a country music group. I'll book them. So he books them, and they promise to tailor a song or two, especially for the convention. And when the curtain opens on the performance, this is what the audience sees. And this is then what they hear. And feel free to sing along with me because there are subtitles on this. And wait until it goes on. Ready? You can get off your knees. I said, white folk. You can do as you please. I said, white folk. Take a bite of cheese. You can do anything you want to. White folk, there's a place you can go. I said, white folk. They put on quite a show. You can stay there. And I'm sure that you'll find many ways to have a good time. Good to play at the CPAC. Time to play at the CPAC. All you need to do is hop on the bus and then come here and stay with us. Time to play at the CPAC. Time to stay at the CPAC. You will have a good time. Not in charge of the time. It's on us. You won't spend the time on it. And so at the end of the song, half of the audience was silent with their jaws agape, and the other half was cheering wildly and shooting guns into the air. And the master of ceremonies wisely decided to side with the people who were shooting off the guns. And he allowed the band to move on to its second song. The band realigned itself. The person playing Tucker Carlson moves to center stage as the lead singer, and the line keeps marching as they sing. And I don't have a video to support this yet. So I'll just say that Mucho Macho Talk is modeled after Macho Macho Man by the Village People. It's their other song, and it's about all of these conservative pundits with 9 faces in a box and so forth. So
you'll never look at CPAC again in the same manner.
Well, I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed putting it together.
I think you covered the bases, so to speak. Well done.